Hey there, this is James Carberry, founder of Sweetfish Media and one of the co-hosts of this show. For the last year and a half, I've been working on my very first book. In it, I share the three-part framework we've used as the foundation for our growth here at Sweetfish. Now, there are lots of companies that have raised a bunch of money and have grown insanely fast. We've talked to a lot of them on the show. We've decided to bootstrap our business, which usually equates to really slow growth. But using the strategy outlined in the book, we're on pace to be one of Inc.'s fastest growing companies in 2020. The book is called Content-Based Networking: How to Instantly Connect with Anyone You Want to Know. And I'm thrilled to tell you that the book has officially launched. If you're a fan of audiobooks like me, you can find the book on Audible. Or if you like physical books, you can find it on Amazon. Just search Content-Based Networking or James Carberry, that's Carbary, in Audible or Amazon, and it should pop right up. If you're listening to this between January 7th and January 10th, you can snag the Kindle version of the book for just 99 cents. All right, let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. Today is another episode in our Why Podcast Work series, where we're talking to B2B marketers that are using a podcast as part of their content marketing and thought leadership efforts for their B2B brand. We're actually joined by a repeat guest, Rebecca Kalogeris. She's the VP of Sales and Marketing over at Pragmatic Institute. We had her back on episode 1127 talking about what marketers wish they could say to their CEOs. That's a great one. You should go back and check the show notes for that episode if you want to check it out. Today, we're going to be talking to Rebecca about her role as the host of the Pragmatic Live podcast. Rebecca, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Logan. I'm thrilled to be here.
Awesome. We are going to be talking a little bit about your podcast journey. You guys have been doing a regular show for some time, and we're going to talk about what the show is, who it serves, and what your experience has been like. For folks who haven't heard you before on the show, give us a little background on yourself and the team at Pragmatic Institute to kick things off today.
Thanks, Logan. So I have been in marketing and product marketing my entire career. And most of that career I have spent in the technology space. Back in 2005, the company I was working at, we were growing very rapidly. And it was clear that we needed to evolve our product and our product offerings. And we didn't have a lot of clarity on the best way to do that. So I thought, you know what? We need a product management team. Let me start a product management team. The CEO was all in and I thought, yay, this is great. And then I thought, I'm not entirely sure how to do that. I should go to a training. And I did. And I went to this amazing training and it absolutely changed the trajectory of my career, both within the company I was in and then as I left moving forward. Turns out, in a wonderful moment of kismet, 6 years later, that company was hiring for someone to lead their marketing group. And so that's where I am. So I'm at Pragmatic Institute. This is what we do. We teach companies how to build and market products that people love and that they buy. And to do this in a way that is far more predictable and dependable than we often see. We see a lot of, it's like 92% of new products fail. And that's across startups and large companies. So making sure that you're doing the right thing for the right people at the right time is really, really important. And we are passionate about teaching people that. And that's what we do.
Awesome, Rebecca. I love it. So as we move on in your story, after you were at Pragmatic Institute for a while, at some point you guys decided to start your own podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about the show that you guys have now, your role as a host, and kind of the journey to getting there? What made you guys want to start a podcast as part of your own marketing efforts?
Absolutely. So our show is called Pragmatic Live. And what we do is collect stories from product marketers and product management professionals about their journeys throughout their careers, right? From when they started to tips and tools that they can share with people, how they've implemented what we've trained them, the problems that they've encountered, the solutions they've come up with. And we let them kind of share their passion and share their story. And then we send it out to the audience. That's our goal, right? Is how do I capture stories from practitioners in the field, share that with others, and provide not only real world trench stories, but actionable advice that people can start to use immediately. So that's the goal of our podcast. And really the genesis of it, one of the things we teach and one of the things we're passionate about is, what you build and how you market it is all based on an understanding of your market. And so as that, we drink our own champagne, as we like to say, and we go out and talk to our market very regularly. And one of the things that came through very clearly was, one, that they wanted more of these stories. and they wanted them in a way that was easy for them to consume. And then when we surveyed and asked them about how they liked to consume information, podcasts were showing a real trend in an upward direction. And it wasn't anything we had experience in, and it wasn't anything we knew how to do, but we could see that this was going to be a bigger and bigger choice for the market and a bigger avenue for them that they wanted to hear from us from. So we just said, you know what, let's just jump in. Let's do it. Let's give it a try.
Yeah, I love the way that you guys, asked your audience. I'm a big fan as I'm talking to folks about their own podcast strategy. Well, we're not sure if, our audience is really, engaging with podcasts. And my response is, well, ask them, because the macro trends that show that we're all listening to more podcasts and more audiobooks. I was listening to Gary Vee speak at do a keynote presentation, and he said, how many people are listening to podcasts? And large number of hands go up. And how many people, when you watch a YouTube video, half the time you put your phone down and just listen to it, and even more hands go up, right? And so the macro trends are pointing in that direction. Take some time to poll your audience. I mean, we're big fans of, repurposing content from a podcast, because you can create content more quickly, which is something I think we're going to talk about in your story. And so it may feed into it, even if podcasts aren't high on your list. But I like the way that you guys went into it with a bit of a data-driven approach. Rebecca, as you and I were chatting a little bit offline, you mentioned some specific areas where you guys have measured and seen the benefit of your podcast. One of the things that was kind of surprising to you is how much it kept people engaged. Can you speak to that a little bit? You saw people saying, hey, we want audio content. This would be an easy way for us to consume it, but had some other benefits of keeping them engaged with your content overall, right?
Yeah, I think it's a really great medium for that. So you have to hook them with just one episode, and then you get to watch them kind of go through your whole backlog of episodes. And it's a really easy way for them to consume different episodes, to flip through different ones. So it's all the work you've done in the past isn't like, oh, those are old, no one's going to hear them. Those are in the past, they ran once. It's just a library of topics for them to explore. And so it's far more evergreen content than I think you would necessarily expect it to be. And because we capture these real stories in the vignettes, it's evergreen in terms of the medium, but also in terms of the content. So you really have something that's got legs, and it's not unusual for us to see a real sort of renaissance of an old issue or old episode that comes up that, 8 months after we released it, it's got this killer week because it just sort of penetrated through and people found it. And that's really fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about telling the stories from in the trenches, and that's, part of our tagline, our typical intro here on B2B Growth is we're telling stories from in the trenches and trying to unpack tactics. So we approach podcasting very similarly to the way that you guys do at Pragmatic Institute. Something I've talked with other marketers about here on the show and offline is the fact that, I've heard Dave Gearhart at Drift, kind of echo this, that we're trusting marketing less. And he talks a lot about being more human and authentic in your marketing. And, you guys have had some surprising ways that a podcast has helped you do that and reach people with that authentic voice, but also kind of surprising in how it accelerated the creation of that authentic content that didn't take you longer to do. Can you speak to kind of the double-sided benefit there, since you guys have been running your podcast for a while now?
Absolutely. So the tone of our podcast is very much meant to be conversational, right? So it's a very organic conversation between myself or one of our other hosts and the guest. And I think that authenticity of that conversation absolutely shines through. And that's why it holds so much weight, right? This is not, there's no way I'm telling the CTO of Box or the chief product officer at Bay or any number of other places what to say. And so to hear it in their own words, the powerful impact, that is so meaningful in an environment today where we're always looking for customer reviews and customer feedbacks. So that's the benefit that was expected and has absolutely been seen. The part that is lovely is in capturing customer stories. The traditional way of doing it are these written case studies, and those take, lots of interviews and a really long legal review process. And the podcasts really don't. We've seen that executives at some of the biggest companies, there's a lot of comfort and ability for them to pop onto a podcast, and there's not that review cycle. Sometimes they want to hear it before it publishes, but that's the minority by far. And so the cycles and the quickness at which you can release these stories and the type of sort of authentic, organic conversations that you can capture in this medium, to me, is just extraordinarily different from not only sort of the written case studies or a really produced video, but even a webinar tends to be more structured and more blocked down. So that's been a really great advantage to the podcast.
Yeah, I love it. You guys are covering two bases there, right? You're infusing more authenticity into the marketing. Everyone I talk to is talking about utilizing the voice of the customer in their marketing. Podcast seems like a kind of on the nose way to do that. And at the same time, so many marketing leaders I talk to, whether they lead a team of 5 or 500, they're trying to accelerate their content creation process to produce more of quality that can be used and do it more quickly. The other thing that I'm hearing, on the sales side of the house is that, everybody's telling salespeople and sales teams, you need to add value. You need to be able to demonstrate that you understand your prospect's point of view. Have you guys been able to kind of bridge the gap between marketing and sales with some of your podcast content and seen the sales team use it in different ways?
Oh, absolutely. Our sales team loves the podcast. I think one of the, it's if you've got a customer and they want to know if you've ever worked with a company like them. That's a very common thing where people want to make sure you really understand them and their industry and their problems. So when they can pull from a library and hear a conversation in a related field, in a related industry, and share it, that's an excellent way. Sometimes what they do even is with existing clients is they'll know someone who's been struggling with maybe an implementation of SAFe or with sales enablement. And they know that from their conversations. And they'll just go like, I just wanted to, share this with you. This new episode came out. I just thought it might be some great feedback that you can use. So it both helps them in sort of lead qualification and lead nurturing as they help with sort of like-minded problems, but also in account management and relationship development as they use those to kind of highlight topics that they know are important. And it just also think it makes us feel very like we're constantly evolving, right? One of the things as a training company that's the biggest one in the field, but also 25 years old, some people might think of that, are you modern? Are you fresh? And the podcast content that comes out weekly really reinforces that we are continually evolving and changing and have our fingers on the pulse of the market in a way that I think really helps our sales team as well. And what we do we do a weekly company stand-up. And so when we have a podcast that we think will be of particular interest, we always highlight that in the guest. And then we also do sort of a monthly digest of the sort of best podcasts from the month before that they can send out and the ones that are coming up that they can tease. And so we try to keep them top of mind as to what's available.
I love it. Sales and marketing alignment in real life, as much as we talk about that here on this show. Any specific ways that you guys have gone a step further to get that podcast content into the hands of your sales team as sales enablement content, either, building in snippets to your, sales engagement tools or baking it into your sales enablement platform? Anything else you would recommend to folks to just making it easily accessible for their sales team?
So one of the other things that was really great that one of our content members did was sort of built a cheat sheet of it's like a spreadsheet, maybe not the sexiest execution style, but the top, and it divides and tags podcasts by topic. So if you're looking for a specific industry, if you're looking for a specific topic using some of our internal language, it's a really easy guide for them to find the most relevant ones.
I love that example. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a super sophisticated integration between these different pieces of your sales tech. It can be as simple as a well thought out database or Google Sheet. If you take the time to make those links easily available and kind of tag them based on industry, topic, those sorts of things. I love that you guys are doing that. Has anything particularly surprised you, Rebecca? You mentioned, the willingness of customers and people in your community to say yes was somewhat surprising. It sounds like you mentioned people kind of staying engaged with the podcast and going back and listening to older episodes. Was that one of the key things that kind of surprised you through your own podcasting journey here?
Yes. I don't think I realized how evergreen that content would be. It's a great benefit for sure. One thing that I also don't know if it was a surprise. It was a very pleasant surprise is they're fantastic to do, Logan. I mean, I'm passionate about my field, and I am fortunate to be at a company where we sell to people who are in my field. And so some days I think, oh, look at me. I'm getting paid to talk to people about things I love talking about and sharing
I know, right?
ideas. And I think that because I really am enthusiastic and passionate about this, I think that does come through. So it's really, really fun for me. And then I think it also makes it fun for the listeners as well. So, I mean, what a delightful surprise, but it's a great part of my day.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I've been, a co-host on this show for a year and a half now, and it's so much fun for me. I kind of live at this intersection of sales, marketing, and journalism. I feel like most days, and combining three of my passions. So I'm right there with you, Rebecca. Rebecca, if you were, in front of a room full of B2B marketing leaders who were thinking about starting a podcast, what would be some of your advice for them as we wrap up today? You've been, very gracious in sharing some of the things along the way that you guys have seen, what you've encountered, and some of the surprises. To kind of wrap with some advice for other B2B marketers out there thinking about a podcast for their own brand, what would be some of the things you'd share with them?
Absolutely. So the first is to invest in the technology. Podcasts are huge these days. There's so many sort of mainstream podcasts that are very well produced. People will stop listening if the sound isn't what it needs to be. And this is like, it sounds so obvious. And yet you're still like, well, no, this is fine. And we'll figure it out. We'll go from here. And you just put it off. And I'm telling you, it's less than $500 to get a really nice setup. You can't always control what your guests sound like, but you can control your own environment. And it really is priceless, because if the sound quality isn't strong, if the volume isn't where it needs to be, it doesn't matter how good the story is you're capturing. And we have some really great episodes from early on that really, really struggled with sound quality. And it's like a shame, right? Like, it's sad. So go spend it. $400, $500, you're going to get a really nice setup, not just an okay one, and you're worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I can echo that here. The equipment that we usually help our customers get set up and get going with in podcasting is not more than that. And we actually have a how to podcast episode on how you can get started on a pretty lean budget with some of the basics. We'll try to link to that in the show notes. But I completely agree with you there, Rebecca. It doesn't take that much. You don't need to have NPR style production quality, but you want to be better than recording on just your phone on Anchor for your brand. Put your best foot forward, and you can do that. Obviously we help teams with that, but even just on your own, it doesn't take a $10,000 podcast studio to have a podcast for your brand. Other pieces of advice you want to leave folks with today, Rebecca?
Yeah, two more. One is that your guests are and can be your best advocate. Make sure you leverage those. I think often we're so thankful that they were on the show, and then you just take their information, and it's a really missed opportunity. The best thing to do, set some expectations about when their episode's going to air. Keep them informed if it's going to change. Send them a link as soon as you can, because they will send to their network. Because you know what? You're excited they're on the show. They were flattered to be asked. And they will spread that news. And that just helps you spread the story, spread the podcast, and get new listeners. So have a really defined process of how you communicate with them afterwards, so that there's not a void and that you're really leveraging. And then the final one that I would absolutely say, is just start, right? I mean, honestly, even if you can't get $400, $500 worth of equipment, just start, because the way to learn is to start doing some episodes. And it's a forgiving medium, right? You can go and you can do some, and you can figure it out, and you can get some muscles around it, but you're never going to get better by just reading more about it or listening to other people's podcasts. Although you should totally listen to mine, but you're really going to get it when you start doing it. So just start doing it. And I think then you'll start to see, are you a good host? Is this something that your listeners want? Do you have a format in mind? All of that's going to evolve as you practice. And so it's the best way to do it. So don't wait, do it now.
Absolutely. I mean, it echoes something that, Gary Vee's been talking about. So many people, consume a lot of his content, and he's telling people, go create. And, he's doing the hashtag Gary Vee challenge right now, encouraging people to stop consuming content and start producing it, because you can get into this mindset of, well, I'm consuming it, so I'm making steps forward. And the parallel here is, I'm reading up on podcasting. I'm, ourselves here at Sweetfish, we put out a lot of content on how to podcast and how to think about getting started, but take those first steps. And that's what we encourage people to do is, you can get better along the way, but you're not going to get better if you're still standing still. So thank you for echoing that and for sharing your podcast journey with us, Rebecca. I love the way that you shared some specific surprises, like the ability to book guests that you wouldn't have been able to get a case study with, the speed at which that helped you create more content, the stickiness of podcasting. It's something I talk with folks a lot about. The unsubscribe rate is just ridiculously low with podcasts. And so, your experience is definitely very common where a lot of downloads start to come from those legacy episodes. And something I think we've talked about a lot on this series is how you can use it for sales enablement content. You gave us some really good examples of how to make that easy, keeping it in front of the sales team, cataloging it so that they can use it in specific instances. Rebecca, if people listening to this would like to stay connected with you or find your podcast and subscribe to Pragmatic Live, what's the best way for them to reach out and engage some more with you guys?
That's a great question. So the podcast is Pragmatic Live. You can find it on iTunes, Podbeans, everywhere you want to be. And the best way to reach out to me is really LinkedIn. So if you find Rebecca Kalogeris on LinkedIn, it's a complicated name, so no one else has it, which is really very convenient for being found. But I'd love to connect and I'd love to hear your stories about your podcast.
Awesome. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for being a guest on the show again and contributing to the Why Podcast Work series. This was a fun conversation. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Logan. Thanks for having me.
Hey everybody, Logan with Sweetfish here. If you're a regular listener of B2B Growth, you know that I'm one of the co-hosts of this show, but you may not know that I also head up the sales team here at Sweetfish. So for those of you in sales or sales ops, I wanted to take a second to share something that's made us insanely more efficient lately. Our team has been using LeadIQ for the past few months, and what used to take us 4 hours gathering contact data now takes us only 1. We're 75% more efficient, we're able to move faster with outbound prospecting, and organizing our campaigns is so much easier than before. I'd highly suggest you guys check out LeadIQ as well. You can check them out at leadiq.com. That's LEADIQ.com.